I knew there wouldn't be an invitation waiting for me, but I packed my bag anyway, bought a one-way Greyhound ticket, and boarded the 5:45 a.m. bus out of North Platte with a wrapped gift balanced on my lap and a name no one had dared to speak in years. The man sitting beside me smelled faintly of diesel and chewing tobacco. He gave me a quick nod as I sat down, then looked away and never tried again. That suited me just fine. I wasn't in the mood for small talk. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even nervous. I was just tired, the kind of tired that sits heavy in your bones, steady and unrelenting. 900 miles stretched ahead of me. 12 hours, not counting the layovers. I'd made ham and mustard sandwiches the way Claire used to like when she was 10, wrapped them in foil, though I doubted I'd touch them. The bus hummed against the early highway. I kept my coat folded neatly across my knees, watching Nebraska fields slip into Iowa skies, then flatten into the straight lines of Illinois. Every so often, a memory rose like a ghost I hadn't invited. Claire at 7 in her yellow raincoat, crying over a snapped shoelace. Claire at 17, slamming the Buick's door after I told her she couldn't take it to a party. Claire at 23, calling to say she was leaving for Atlanta for good. Just need space, Mom. Don't take it personally. But I did. Of course I did. It had been 5 years since I'd last seen her. The last time was her birthday. I mailed a card with $50 tucked inside, and she called me quick and polite, like she was returning a message from the bank. She mentioned a promotion, a shiny condo downtown, and a man named David. I asked, is he kind? She answered, he's successful. That told me enough. And then in June, my neighbor's niece, chatty girl working at a boutique hotel in Atlanta, mentioned casually that the Rivers family was hosting a grand wedding that fall. The daughter's name is Claire. Can you imagine? Real society people. She had no idea who she was talking to. I smiled, nodded while my chest tightened like a fist. My Claire. I waited. No envelope came. Every morning I checked the mailbox. Every night I refreshed my inbox. I even braved social media, though I hated the damn thing. Still nothing. But I knew the date. I knew the hotel. The very one I'd once helped her put a down payment on when she swore she'd never be able to afford it. I still had the canceled check tucked away in a drawer. I knew the ceremony started at 4:30, followed by the reception. I knew enough. So I packed a navy dress, a pair of shoes with straps that didn't pinch, a carefully wrapped gift, and a card with only 5 words. For the start of everything. Inside, a check unsigned. Not a cent until I saw her eyes. At a rest stop outside Indianapolis, I watched a young mother chase her toddler across the grass, laughing loud and unbothered. The boy tossed a cup on the ground, and she picked it up without a word of scolding. I remembered that kind of patience. I used to have it once when Claire was small. I'd been only 20 when I had her, half a girl myself. Her father was gone before she turned 2. I never blamed her for the distance that grew between us. Sometimes I blamed myself for not knowing how to hold her close without smothering her. 15 minutes, folks, the driver called. By the time we crossed into Georgia, the sky had gone dark. City lights flickered on like stars flipped upside down. Skyscrapers taller than anything I recognized, traffic louder than my memory had allowed. Atlanta had swallowed my daughter whole. The bus terminal was chaos. Families shouting, students crowding, drivers honking, lights blinking. I clutched my bag, stepped stiffly onto the pavement, and rolled my sore shoulders. 12 hours, no sleep. My knees ached. I hailed a cab. The driver barely glanced back at me. Where to, ma'am? Wyndham Regency, I said. My voice surprised me. Calm. Steady. Certain. In the rearview mirror I caught my reflection. 74 years old, white hair pinned neatly, a touch of lipstick. Not beautiful maybe, but dignified. I nodded at myself. I hadn't come to cause a scene. I'd come to see what love looked like now without me in the frame. The hotel rose like a postcard, white marble and glass, chandeliers spilling light like frozen waterfalls. The doorman opened the car door before I could. I stepped out, steadying my knees. He offered me his hand and I took it. Not out of need but out of habit. Are you checking in? He asked. No, I said. Just visiting. He didn't press. People don't press when you're old and quiet. They assume you either know exactly what you're doing, or you're too lost to bother. Either way, they leave you alone. Inside, the lobby buzzed with soft jazz and polished shoes. Guests lined up, stylish in that effortless way the wealthy always manage. Bellboys rushed past with gold carts stacked with suitcases big enough to hold a whole life. No one looked at me twice. I slipped into a chair near a potted palm. My legs were trembling. I pulled a tissue from my bag to blot my forehead. My hand brushed the envelope with the check. Still sealed, still smooth. No creases. A tall blonde woman passed with a man steering her by the elbow. "The Rivers wedding is in the ballroom, right?" That's what the invite said. My stomach lurched. Claire hadn't even changed her name. Rivers, her father's name. Not mine. Not hers technically, not since the divorce. But it carried weight. Legacy. Sounded like prep schools and trust funds. Not a rented house with mismatched furniture. And a mother who worked double shifts in a cafeteria. I never argued when she reclaimed it. I understood. I rose and crossed to the concierge desk. A young woman in a neat blazer smiled. "Good evening. How can I help you?" "I'm looking for the ballroom. The Rivers wedding." Her fingers tapped across the keyboard. "Of course. Second floor, past the elevators. You'll see the signs." I thanked her, though my throat was dry. Past the elevators, the carpet deepened into burgundy patterned with gold swirls. At the top of the stairs, the hallway widened into a reception area filling fast with guests. Waiters carried trays of champagne. Music floated from a quartet. A photographer snapped endless smiles. I stepped aside to let a group pass. "You here for the Rivers?" one asked, casual. I nodded. "Yes. I'm with the bride." The words felt borrowed, like I'd slipped into someone else's story. I ducked into a side lounge, quiet and empty, 2 velvet chairs and a table of honeymoon brochures. I sat studying my hands. They didn't shake anymore. I hadn't come with a plan. No speech, no scene. I didn't even know if I'd stay. But something deep and steady inside me whispered, "You came all this way. You get to see." At 7:30, I checked into a nearby motel. Clean enough. Stiff sheets, no view but quiet. I sat on the bed's edge and unbuckled my shoes, red marks blooming around my ankles. I set the envelope on the nightstand, $25,000. More than I'd ever spent on myself. Years of saving, birthday checks uncashed, substitute teacher bonuses, little dividends from the union fund. I could have fixed the roof, redone the plumbing. But when I heard Claire's name tied to Atlanta and this wedding, I knew where it belonged. Unless she didn't want it. Unless she didn't want me. I called the desk and ordered a cab for 9 a.m. "To the Wyndham Regency," I repeated like a mantra. "Yes, ma'am," the clerk said. "Heading to that wedding too?" I paused. "Yes, I am." I hardly slept. The sheets smelled faintly of bleach and dust. The air conditioner rattled like an old truck. Every hour I checked the clock, half hoping it wasn't morning yet, half hoping it was. 6:30 I gave up. I dressed carefully. Navy blue dress, 3/4 sleeves, simple neckline. A good choice. It didn't beg for attention, but it didn't apologize either. I looked like a woman who belonged anywhere she decided to stand. I pinned my hair, added the pearl earrings Claire had given me back in college, when her card still ended with "Love you, Mama." I checked my purse again. Wallet, lipstick, handkerchief, envelope, all there. I tucked it deeper inside, not out of fear but to keep it close. The cab arrived 5 minutes early. The driver, barely more than a boy, offered to take my bag. I shook my head. It felt good to carry something myself. "You going back to the Regency?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He whistled. "Big wedding this weekend. Some CEO's daughter, right?" "Something like that," I murmured, watching the morning light stretch across the sidewalks. Atlanta glittered, loud and careless, eager to forget me. Back home in Nebraska, people waved from porches, knew your dog's name. Here no one cared who I was. Except maybe one woman in white who may or may not want me anywhere near her on the most photographed day of her life. I wondered what Claire would wear. I pictured lace, soft sleeves, a veil brushing her shoulders. She'd always liked simplicity, at least before the condo and the office and the people who called her Izzy, and forgot where she came from. At the hotel, the valet reached for the door, but I opened it myself. "I'll be quick," I told the cabbie. Inside, the lobby pulsed with noise, heels clicking, men in suits, laughter spilling near the espresso bar. Bellboys weaved through like dancers. I slipped into the elevator. On the second floor, lilies lined the hallway, tiny lanterns glowing. A sign on an easel read, "Welcome to the Rivers Anderson wedding. Ceremony 11 a.m. Reception to follow." Perfect. I was early. At the ballroom entrance, a young woman with a clipboard scanned her list. "May I help you?" "I'm here for the wedding," I said. "Name?" "I didn't RSVP," I answered calmly. "But I came a long way. 900 miles. She hesitated, discomfort flickering in her eyes. "I'm with the bride's family," I said quietly. "Her mother." Something shifted. Not in her face, not in her stance, but in the way she blinked once slow, realizing she'd stepped into something delicate. "Of course," she said finally. "Second to last row. Any unassigned seat." I thanked her and stepped inside. The ballroom glowed softly. White chairs in rows faced a floral arch draped in fabric. A string quartet tuned on the side. Everything immaculate. I chose a seat near the back, beside a stranger who chatted about the food. I folded my hands in my lap. At 11 sharp, the music swelled. The doors opened. And there she was. Claire. Not lace. Not satin. A sleek modern gown. No veil, just her dark hair twisted back. Bouquet clutched in both hands. Her face perfect, composed. She looked like someone who had never once been 9 years old. Barefoot in my kitchen, peeling potatoes. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and turned away. Either way, she walked that aisle without a flicker of hesitation. And I, from the second to last row, smiled. Not from pride. Not from hurt. But simply because I was there. After the ceremony, the crowd spilled toward the reception like a slow-moving river of laughter and clinking glasses. I stayed seated a little longer. My legs needed the rest. So did I. Watching Claire up there at the altar, polished and perfect, stirred something in me I hadn't expected. Not jealousy. Not even sadness. It was quieter than that. It felt like standing in the doorway of a house you used to live in. The furniture's all different. The walls painted over. No trace left of your hand once tucking in every blanket corner. But you still remember exactly where the floorboards creak. I slipped out toward the back of the ballroom and into the hallway. The same woman with the clipboard was there, now flanked by staff adjusting their earpieces. "Would you like an escort to the reception hall?" she asked with careful warmth. "No need," I said, smiling faintly. "I'll find it." She didn't stop me. The reception hall was bigger, grander. Soaring ceilings, tall windows, chandeliers glowing like frozen suns. Tables dressed with china, gold napkin rings, name cards lined neatly in rows. Staff moved like shadows, topping water glasses, adjusting chairs. The whole room hummed with anticipation. I paused near the entrance. I knew my name wouldn't be waiting on one of those cards. I wasn't expected. Months of silence had told me that. Empty inbox, quiet phone, no calls from Claire. Still I walked in. At the far end stretched the head table, white roses spilling across its length. Place cards spelled out the seats. David, Claire, Brandon, Marjorie. At the very edge sat an empty chair, turned slightly as though waiting for someone late. My heart pounded, but it stayed steady. I began walking toward it. Halfway there I heard it, Mom. Not warm, not welcoming, just sharp, startled. Like a twig snapping underfoot. I turned. Claire stood there, bouquet gone, glass in hand, her face unreadable. "Mom," she repeated softer now. "I didn't know you were coming." "I know," I said gently. We stood in silence, the kind that stretched too long. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "I wanted to," I said. "But I wasn't sure you'd want me here." She looked into her drink. "It's just, this is all very formal." I nodded. "It is." Another pause. Then she gestured slightly toward the head table, her voice hushed. "That table's really for the wedding party." "I know that too," I told her. "I'm not here to make a scene, Claire." "Then why are you here?" I reached into my bag. The envelope felt heavy, as if it had absorbed the weight of the miles I'd carried it. I held it out. "I came to give you this. You can open it later or not." She didn't take it. She didn't even look at it. Behind us, the music shifted. Guests were settling into their seats, voices rising like steam. "Mom," she said again, tighter this time. "I just wish you'd told me." You would have invited me? I asked quietly. Her eyes flickered. She didn't answer. I nodded once. That's what I thought. I walked past her, steady, not hurried, not proud, and slid into the empty chair at the end of the head table. No one stopped me. David looked up as I sat. Confusion flickered across his face. I gave him a nod. He returned it, cautious. Claire stood where I'd left her, glass in hand, mouth slightly open, caught mid-thought. A waiter passed with champagne. I took a flute, sipped. The bubbles stung my tongue. The clink of silverware filled the air like soft applause. I didn't look at Claire again. I stayed because I'd come too far to slip out quietly. People didn't know what to make of me, that much was clear. Conversations ebbed and flowed around me, but no one spoke directly to me. Not yet. They stole polite glances, curious glances, the kind that whisper, "Who is she? Why is she here?" I felt them like a draft under a closed door. David leaned toward Claire and whispered something. She nodded, brittle smile holding in place. I kept my eyes fixed on the silverware. The first course arrived. A little tower of greens and goat cheese balanced like art. I ate neatly, slowly. I wasn't here to impress anyone, but I wasn't here to shrink either. "Excuse me," a voice said behind me. I turned. A tall man, maybe in his 50s, gray hair at his temples. His expression softened with recognition. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said. "I think we've met. You're Claire's mother, aren't you? Margaret?" "Yes," I nodded. "Charles Denton." He introduced himself, offering a hand. "We worked together years ago when Claire was starting out in consulting. She talked about you often." I shook his hand. "She used to talk about me a lot," I said gently. "Not so much anymore." He gave a small, uncertain laugh. "Well, weddings keep people busy." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He excused himself. A few more guests wandered over. Mostly older women, curious but polite. One asked if I was the bride's aunt. I smiled. "Something like that." Another admired my dress. A third asked where I'd traveled from. "Nebraska," I said. 900 miles. Her eyes widened. "Goodness. That's dedication." "I thought so," I replied. "Not everyone agrees." She smiled tighter and drifted away. I watched Claire through the courses. She sat with perfect posture, laughing where she was supposed to, nodding at toasts. But her eyes kept darting toward me, like she was waiting for me to stand, to say something, to explode her perfect script. I had no such plan. But knowing she worried I might was its own quiet satisfaction. Eventually David leaned toward me. "Mrs. Holloway, right?" "Yes." "I'm sorry. I didn't realize you'd made the trip. Claire never said you were coming." "She didn't know," I replied evenly. He hesitated. "I see. Well, it's good you're here." "Is it?" I asked. "Of course." I studied him. Clean-cut, confident, suit-tailored, watch expensive but subtle. His hand rested on the back of Claire's chair, like it had always belonged there. I wondered if he truly knew about me, or if she'd erased me from the story altogether. "I hear you're in finance," I said. "Private equity," he nodded. "A world away from school lunchrooms and stainless steel trays," I said. He tilted his head. "I was a cafeteria cook," I explained. 12 years. Middle school. Kids loved Taco Tuesday." His smile was tight. "Sounds like hard work." "It was," I said. "Raising a child alone usually is." He didn't answer. I let the silence settle like a stone. By then dinner was over. Plates cleared, the quartet yielding to a DJ setting up near the dance floor. Voices rose, laughter scattered into corners. I stood stretching my legs. A young woman crossed the room, smiling with recognition. "Are you Margaret, Claire's mom?" "Yes." "I thought so. I'm Camila, we went to high school together. Choir. She never mentioned you were coming." "She didn't know," I said again. Camila looked at her shoes. "She's lucky to have you here." I had no answer, so I stayed quiet. But inside something loosened. Not everyone thought I was a ghost from her past. The DJ played a soft jazz standard. Claire and David stepped onto the floor, swaying polished and perfect, cameras flashing. Their first dance looked rehearsed, controlled, like they'd written a script for the rest of their lives. I moved to the side, safer in the background. That had always been my role anyway. A waiter offered champagne. I declined. Too many bubbles turned my stomach. When the music shifted to something livelier, bridesmaids kicked off their heels, groomsmen tossed ties over their shoulders. The scene looked carefree, curated like an ad for perfect lives. That's when I felt a tap on my shoulder. A young man, early 20s, tie askew jacket rumpled. Mrs. Holloway? Yes. I'm David's cousin. I just wanted to say, I didn't know Claire had a mom. He winced. I mean, of course she does. She just never mentioned you. Most people don't notice the plumbing until it leaks, I said softly. He blinked. Sorry. Don't worry, I told him, offering a faint smile. You're not the first surprised I exist. He shifted awkwardly. Well, I'm glad you're here. Weddings are better when family shows up. That simple truth gave me pause. Yes, I said. They are. He nodded and slipped away. I turned back to the dance floor. Claire laughed as she twirled, her gown lifting like a curtain. For a moment she looked young again. Not polished, not rehearsed, just joyful. And then she saw me. Just for a second our eyes locked. Her smile faltered barely, but enough. Then a friend pulled her back into the rhythm, and she looked away. Still she'd seen me. She couldn't unsee me. I lowered my hands onto my clutch. They were steady. I didn't feel hurt. I felt grounded. Something loose had finally clicked into place. I hadn't come for attention. I'd come to see her joy, real joy, not the kind cropped and filtered. And I had. That was enough. A woman near my age appeared at my side, silver curls pinned back, lipstick smudged just slightly, dressed the color of red wine, martini in hand. You're a brave woman, she said. I'm sorry. I've been watching. You walked in like you belonged here, like you didn't care what anyone thought. I admire that. I hesitated, then said the only thing I could. I raised the bride. She laughed gently. Then you belong here more than any of us. We stood together in quiet companionship. She sipped. I watched Claire dance. What's her name? She asked. Claire. She's lovely. She was. I started, then caught myself. She is. The woman nodded, understanding more than I said. Don't disappear too quickly. Then she drifted away. I stayed long enough to see the cake cut, the toast from David's father. The bouquet nearly hit the chandelier. I didn't speak to Claire again. She didn't come near me, but her eyes circled the room, always knowing where I was. That was enough. Knowing was enough. I slipped outside before the last dances began. The night air was cooler, calmer. Music pulsed through the walls like a faint heartbeat. I walked along the lawn, heels sinking into the grass, fairy lights glowing golden overhead. I needed space. I'd crossed the country, stepped into a wedding uninvited, sat at the bride's table, seen the daughter I raised pretend not to see me, and I was still here, still whole, not humiliated, not broken. There was strength in that. Quiet kind. The kind that comes from having already survived too much. A man stood smoking near the hedge. When he saw me, he straightened. Evening, he said. Evening, I returned. He stubbed out his cigarette. These weddings. Exhausting, aren't they? They can be, I said. Depends on the seat. He chuckled. That bad, huh? Let's just say the seat wasn't reserved. But I took it anyway. He tilted his head. That's the best kind of seat. Maybe. He extended a hand. Jim. David's uncle. I shook it. Margaret. His eyes flickered. Oh, you're Claire's mother. I nodded once. She never mentioned. He stopped himself. Well, I'm glad you came. I didn't answer. He shifted, then said softly, families are complicated. That's one word for it. If it helps, he added. David doesn't care about appearances as much as Claire does. He's steadier. I think he'll be good to her. I only nodded. I hope so. We stood in easy silence. Then I turned back toward the hotel. Inside, the lights had dimmed. A slow song drifted out. Couples clung to one another like ships in a gentle storm. Watching Isabel swaying with Nathaniel again, her eyes half shut, her cheek pressed against his shoulder, I caught something different in her. She really did look happy. Not for show, not for the phones lifted around the room, not for the crowd. Honest, unfiltered happiness. Still, there was a tightness at the edge of her smile. A small crease at her jaw that hadn't been there years ago. I wondered who she'd be once the gown came off, once the music cut out, once this polished night dissolved into hangers, cleaners, and silence. Would she remember I came? Would she reach for the phone even just once? Or would she seal up her dress, scribble thank you notes, post the polished photos online, and let me slip back into the quiet? I went back inside, to the edge of the reception, pressed against the wall where nobody paid much mind. I stayed through the bouquet toss, listened politely to another uncle's toast, even stepped outside to watch the sparkler send off like some scene from a magazine. And then I left. No big announcement, no goodbye. If anyone noticed me step out, no one stopped me. The lobby glowed warm as I passed through. A young couple checking in, flushed from dancing, shoes dangling from their hands. The bride's hem was smudged, her makeup streaked faintly under one eye, and she looked freer that way than she had all evening. I smiled, moved past, and walked straight into the waiting cab. The driver, same kid who'd brought me that morning, raised his brows. "Leaving so soon?" he asked. I nodded, sinking into the back seat. "It's been a long day." He didn't press. As we pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of the windows above, light spilling through, faint music pulsing against the glass. Isabel was still up there, dancing, still grinning, the party still hers. And me? I wasn't bitter. That caught me off guard. I wasn't angry or wounded. I just felt finished. Not erased, not celebrated. Just finished. Like closing a book after reading the last page. Not the ending I'd wanted, but one that was final, clear, and strangely enough for me. The motel was hushed when I returned. That kind of hush that sits on you warm and heavy like a blanket. I locked the door, slipped off my shoes, and perched at the edge of the bed without bothering with the light. Down the hall, a vending machine hummed. Teenagers laughed as they passed by. And then silence again. I sat straight, hands folded on my purse, my head crowded with the noise of old memories. Weddings have a way of cracking the seal on the past, letting all the voices tumble out. A train ride. A dress. A daughter's name that wasn't mine anymore. Isabel Holloway was the name I gave her. Isabel Rivers, the one she took. She was only 19 when she'd said, "It just sounds better, Mom. More professional." I'd let it go. I let her go. I always told myself that was love. Letting her choose, letting her leave, letting her be. Sitting here, I wondered if I'd mixed love up with fear. Fear of holding too tight. Fear of making myself unwanted. Fear that if I pushed, I'd lose her altogether. The clock glowed 12:02 when I finally rose. I flicked on the lamp, dug into my purse and pulled out the envelope. Still sealed. Still waiting. I placed it on the nightstand beside the Bible and the cheap plastic water cup. I stared at it. What now? What does a mother do after a wedding where her name goes unsaid? Where her chair has to be claimed without welcome? Where she shows up like a surprise guest instead of blood? I didn't know. But I did know this. I wouldn't sleep here another night. The bus was already booked. Dawn would carry me west again. Another 12 hours of rattling windows and flat fields sliding past. I packed neat, folded the dress carefully, tucked the envelope in the middle of the suitcase like fragile glass. Then I tore a page from the motel pad and wrote only a few lines. No apologies. No begging. No bitterness. Dear Isabel, I came because I needed to see you. I stayed because I still believe in showing up no matter the miles. The gift is yours if you want it. Mom. I folded the note around the check, slipped both into a plain envelope, scrawled her full name. Isabel Holloway Rivers. The next morning, I left it at the desk for her suite. The clerk raised her brows. She's staying here? She asked. She will be, I said. She promised it'd be delivered. I thanked her, stepped out into the sharp September air. It felt cleaner than yesterday. Lighter. Like the sky had dropped its own weight overnight. At the bus terminal, I found the same bench I'd sat on 2 days earlier. Back then I'd been full of questions. Now I had none left. Isabel hadn't stopped me. She hadn't asked me to go either. But she also hadn't reached back. That silence, that choice, it told me everything. I didn't go to beg forgiveness. I went to be seen. And for one thin sliver of time I had been. The ride home was quieter. Same hum, same cracked vinyl, same stale coffee smell. But something in me had shifted. I didn't stare out the window as much. I didn't trace the counties. I let it all roll by unmeasured. The bus wasn't as full this time. A couple leaned into each other at the back, headphones between them. A man in a suit dozed with his mouth open. A child tried to hand me a gummy bear. And I took it with a smile, tucking it into my pocket like a secret. Around Iowa, I pulled out a spiral notebook. Nothing fancy, just lined paper, the kind I'd use for shopping lists. I began to write, not to Isabel, not a diary, but to myself. Memories. Not bitter, not polished. Just real. The smell of bleach and mashed potatoes from the school cafeteria after 12-hour shifts. The Christmas card she made with macaroni glued to paper, kept in my drawer until it fell apart. The phone call where she cried from joy after her first job offer. The last time she spoke to me like I was someone who mattered. The words came easy. I wasn't writing to accuse. I was writing to remember. By Nebraska, the sun stretched itself thin and gold across the sky. When I unlocked my front door that night, nothing outside had changed. Same peeling shutters. Same weak porch bulb. Same silence. But stepping through, I was steadier. Not bigger, not braver. Just steadier. I unpacked slow, placed the dress back in its bag, set the earrings aside, poured myself water in my chipped kitchen glass, and stood at the window. Outside, the street was still. Inside, I wasn't the same. I hadn't been welcomed. I hadn't been thanked. But I had shown up. Sat at the table. Walked out when I chose. On my terms. That mattered. A knock came just before 9. I wasn't expecting anyone. Myra, my neighbor, cardigan button wrong, lavender in her hair. She held out a foil-covered plate. Thought you might be tired. Meatloaf, she said. I blinked. How do you know I was back? She shrugged. Saw your light. She set it on my counter, unwrapped it. Steam curled. We ate at the kitchen table without ceremony, me making tea, her spreading ketchup. Halfway through, she glanced at me. So? Was it everything you wanted? I chewed slow, swallowed. No, I said. But it was exactly what it needed to be. She nodded, and that was enough. Later, after dishes were stacked and she'd gone home, I stood at the doorway of the old guest room. Isabel's room once. Twin bed. Blue quilt. The room I'd kept waiting. I closed the door gentle. For the first time in years, I went to sleep without waiting for the phone. Dawn woke me, not a dream, not a jolt, just awake. Coffee steamed in the kitchen while the horizon split itself open. September in Nebraska bites at you, warns you winter's coming. I checked my phone. No calls. No texts. No envelope returned. That, I reminded myself, wasn't mine to control anymore. Still, I kept the phone on the table, screen up like muscle memory. By mid-morning, I walked the block. Past the church. Through the cemetery where sycamores already glowed gold. Past Mrs. Elwood's empty house. I thought, this is what happens if you're not careful. Ending in someone else's plan, tucked away, silenced. Not me. Not yet. Back home, I dug out the old photo albums. Plastic sleeves, the smell of dust. Isabel, furious baby. Isabel, racing ahead of the camera. Isabel, sharp in her prom dress. Isabel, grown at graduation. I traced the photo of her 5th birthday, face sticky with chocolate, tinfoil crown tilting, grinning straight at me. I slipped it into a frame, set it on the mantel. A reminder that once, she had loved me without hesitation. By noon, I had dough rising on the counter. Bread takes patience, trust. Recipes don't betray you. I was halfway through shaping it when the doorbell rang. I wiped flour on my apron and opened the door. Eloise, my granddaughter. Backpack slung, brown hair tied back, eyes guarded. Sorry, she said. I should have called. I froze. What are you doing here? She dug into her bag and pulled out the envelope. My handwriting. My note. Mom just left it on the table. Like junk mail, she said, voice tight. She didn't open it. But I did. She blinked fast. Grandma, $25,000? Are you serious? It was meant as a gift, I whispered. For her. Her lip trembled. She doesn't deserve it. She's still my daughter, I said. She's forgotten you're her mother, Eloise shot back. I motioned her inside. We sat at the kitchen table. The smell of yeast filled the room. She slid the check back across. You should keep it. I asked softly. What would you do with it? She looked startled. What? If it were yours, I said. What then? She hesitated. I'd go back to school. Finish my degree. Mom says it's pointless. That I should just settle. I studied her. The face that looked so much like Isabel once did, but softer, kinder. I pulled out a fresh envelope, wrote her name across. Then it's yours, I said. She blinked. Grandma. No strings, I said. But one request. Write me. Call me. Let me know who you're becoming. Her eyes filled. I will. She didn't stay long. Just long enough to hug me hard. The kind of hug that says, I see you. You matter. When she left, I stood in the doorway watching her walk down the street. Isabel had never looked back. Maybe Eloise would. That night I barely slept. Not from worry but from something new. Awake, present, alive. I sat by the window, quilt across my knees, tea cooling on the table, and thought of Eloise's eyes. Recognition. That's all I'd ever wanted. The next morning the phone rang. Not a ping. A real ring. Old-fashioned, low, steady. Picked it up. Hi, Mom. Isabel's voice. Flat, careful like testing ice. I saw the envelope, she said. Silence stretched. Eloise brought it back. She said you gave it to her. I did, I said. I thought it was for me. It was. At first. A pause. So you changed your mind? No, I answered softly. I gave it to the one who needed it, and who wasn't afraid to accept it. Quiet hummed across the line. I pictured her in her kitchen, arms crossed, staring out at some skyline she thought she'd claimed. You came to my wedding, she said finally. I did. Uninvited. Why? I closed my eyes. Because I remember the first time you said, Mama. Because I know how much milk you liked over your cereal and how you hated the crust on your toast. Because I held you through fevers, through croup, through nights that seemed endless. Because I worked myself raw so you could have choices. And because even after everything, I still believed it mattered to be there. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You embarrassed me. No, Isabel, I said, steady now. I reminded you that I exist. The line went still. She didn't fight back. She didn't apologize either. I didn't ask you to come, she said. No, I answered gently. And I didn't ask you to leave space for me. But I came anyway. Because someday, when the music fades and the photos curl, you may remember who sat quietly at the edge of your day, just to see you smile. Her breath caught, almost like a laugh but sharper. Do you think that makes it okay? She asked. No, I said. But it makes it true. We lingered there, both of us breathing into the hum of the line, neither rushing to fill the space. Then, almost a whisper, she said, I saw you during the first dance. I saw you watching. I know, I answered softly. I almost came over, she admitted. I know that too. The silence that followed wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy, like something had finally settled between us. Then she said, Eloise told me you gave her the check. I did. That was a lot of money. It was. She wants to go back to school. I think she should. She said you didn't ask for anything in return. I didn't. Another pause. Then came the jab. That's not like you. No, I said steady. That's who I've always been. You just stopped seeing it. She didn't argue. Maybe she couldn't anymore. I don't know what you want from me, she finally said. Nothing, I answered. She let out a small laugh, not cruel but with sharp edges. You show up at my wedding, give away $25,000 and say you want nothing? I said I didn't want anything. I never said I gave nothing. That shut her down. She didn't know what to do with that. So I let the silence breathe. Then I asked, do you want me to go away again? I will if it's easier. No answer. Just quiet. Finally a low, unsure voice. I don't know. I nodded, though she couldn't see. Well, now you know how to reach me. If you ever want to. She didn't say goodbye. The line just went dead. I stood with the dial tone humming in my ear, then set the phone back in its cradle. I poured myself another cup of tea, stepped into the sunlight spilling across my kitchen. She had called. She had said, Mom. That was more than yesterday. And sometimes a crack is all the light you need. A week went by. No more calls. No texts. No updates from Eloise. No envelope returned. Just life. Ordinary patterns steady. I raked leaves. Cleaned out the pantry. Returned books to the library. Paid the light bill in person because I still don't trust those online systems. The clerk smiled politely and asked if I'd been away. A wedding, I said. Family. She lit up. Sounds lovely. I didn't correct her. Some truths don't fit into small talk. That evening, I sat on my porch with a blanket over my knees and broth instead of tea. Funny how age makes you appreciate warmth in the joints, in your back, in your hands. Across the street, the big tree let go of its leaves like it had finally grown tired. A quiet surrender. I recognized the feeling. The sky was sharp and nearly clear, 3 stars, maybe 4. For the first time, I let myself imagine a life without Isabel in it. Not from anger. Not from defeat. But because I finally understood how dangerous it is to grip someone who's turned away. I had spent years stretching myself thin for her, sending gifts, apologizing without knowing what for, loving from a distance that begged to be noticed. But love, real love, doesn't beg. It stands. And if the other person turns, sometimes you let them go. Inside, I opened a shoebox I hadn't touched in years. Isabel's drawings. Birthday cards. School photos. In one, she'd sketched the 2 of us under a bright sun with smiling faces. Me with curly hair, her in a pink dress holding hands. She'd scrawled me and Mama forever. I held it for a long time, then put it back and closed the lid. That night I wrote a letter. Not to her but to myself. A single page. Enough. You showed up. You didn't shrink. You gave freely. And when it wasn't returned, you stayed standing. You are allowed to let go. You are still whole. You are still here. I slipped it into my nightstand drawer. Sleep came fitful, but when it did, the dreams were soft. Familiar. The next morning, I baked lemon poppy seed bread. Isabel had adored it as a child. My hands remembered, muscle and wrist carrying memory. I wrapped loaves for Myra, for the church office, and one for Eloise. That evening Eloise showed up, cheeks red from the wind. She sat at my table chewing her second slice. I've been thinking, she said, about going back in January, not waiting until fall. Then do it, I told her. Don't wait for perfect. She stared at me. Do you ever miss her? The question sliced, though she hadn't meant it to. I never stopped, I said. Do you think she'll come around? I thought for a while, then shook my head. I think she circles. That's what people like her do. They orbit. They don't always land. Then I smiled. But if she did, the door isn't locked. I just won't hold it open in the cold anymore. Eloise squeezed my hand across the table. When she left, I gave her a container with the last slices and a slip of paper with the recipe. Keep it alive, I said. She nodded. The holidays came fast. Or maybe it only felt that way. Carols in the grocery store before Halloween. Red ribbons on lampposts before Thanksgiving. I caught my reflection in a shop window framed between wreaths. For a second, I didn't recognize the woman looking back. She wasn't smiling big. She wasn't posing. But she looked content. And that's heavier than happy. Content holds. Thanksgiving was warm at Myra's. Her sister and nephews. Carrots and bread from me. Good wine. They called me Miss Margaret. Nobody mentioned Isabel. That was its own gift. Eloise sent a postcard from orientation 3 hours west. Just a river photo and scribbled words. It's freezing. I love it already. Thank you. I pinned it to my fridge like treasure. In December, a package showed up. No return address. Just my name on a brown box. Inside, a velvet pouch. The pearl earrings Isabel had given me in college, back when she dotted hers with hearts over Mom. No note. Just the earrings. Once I would have read into it, lost sleep over whether it meant peace or finality or mistake. This time I put them back in their box, set them on the shelf. She can keep her silences. I have my peace. I bake cinnamon rolls for the church fundraiser. Myra borrowed a pie dish. I'd my calendar. Christmas plans, she asked. No, I said. And I'm fine with that. Eloise came by later that week with a scarf she'd knitted. Crooked, warm, perfect. We sat on the porch sipping cider. Mom said you sent the earrings back, she mentioned. She told you that? Not much else. Just that she didn't know what to do with them. I nodded. I wore them because she gave them. I returned them because she gave them back first. Took her a few years, but she did. She thinks you embarrassed her, Eloise said carefully. I know. She's wrong, Eloise added. I've never seen anyone hold dignity like that. It shook her. I smiled. Maybe she's not used to being the one who looks away first. She always needed the world to match her plan, I said. And I didn't fit anymore. You still could, Eloise whispered. No, but I don't have to. That's the difference. Later, she invited me to midnight mass. I hadn't gone in years. Then it's time, I told her. We sat near the back of the candlelit church. Not out of shame but for the view. The restless kids, the tired couples, the widows with purses tight in their laps. Strangers humming hymns together. Comfort in unison. Eloise sang too, quiet, unwavering. Afterward, she walked me home. On the porch she said, "She talks about you more than you think. Just not how you'd hope." That's all right, I said. Even silence is a kind of conversation. You're too patient, she sighed. No, I'm just not angry anymore. She hugged me. A real hug. Not polite. Understanding. Inside, the house felt warmer. I poured myself milk. Something I hadn't done since Isabel was small, and I'd warm it on the stove when nightmares woke her. I remembered her curls, her weight against me, the trust. Funny how people forget the safety freely given but never forget the one time it wasn't. That night I slept through until morning. The next day a letter arrived. Isabel's handwriting, tight and neat, but hers. I sat for 10 minutes before opening it. No apology. No drama. Just words. I don't know why you came, but I know why you stayed. Even if I couldn't say it then, I see it now. You didn't come for a seat. You came for me. I don't know what to do with that yet, but I wanted you to know. I didn't throw it out. Didn't answer. I tucked it in the drawer beside my own letter to myself. Because I finally understood, love doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes it just needs to stand, porch light glowing, steady in the dark. Later, Myra stopped by for nutmeg. I told her about the letter just enough. She smiled. Sounds like the door might be cracked. Maybe, I said. But she knows where I am. That's enough. That night, by the fire, quilt on my lap, I thought about all the women told to stay small, to accept scraps. Maybe the win we forget to celebrate is this: we showed up. We stayed. We didn't wait for permission to matter. That was enough. That was everything. You don't survive invisibility by waiting to be seen. You survive by seeing yourself. Took me most of my life to learn that. I used to think love meant bending until someone finally noticed. But sometimes they never do. And the question becomes, who are you if they don't? The answer I know now is still you. Spring came. Snow melting soft. Books finished. Recipes tested. Quilts repaired. Eloise kept calling, kept writing. Her voice unfolding like dough rising slow and steady. 3 months after the wedding, Isabel's card arrived. Thin ink smudged. I've been thinking about your seat. At the time it felt like a challenge. Now I see it was an anchor. You didn't come to be honored. You came because you always had been. Maybe I needed to see you sit where no one saved you a place. Just so I'd understand what that meant. Thank you for not leaving early. No promises. No warmth. But no silence either. And I realized closure isn't given. It's chosen. I didn't need her to rewrite the story. I had written mine. I cleared out the guest room. Not surrender. A gift to myself. A sewing room now. My old singer by the window. On the wall, a photo of Eloise and me at Christmas, scarves wrapped around us, her grin wide and sure. That was enough family. One afternoon Myra asked if I was still writing. I suppose I am, I said. What about? Just stories. But the kind that tell the truth. She nodded. We need more of those. She's right. We do. Stories of women who don't vanish when the world tells them to. Of mothers who stand even when the chair isn't saved for them. Of quiet power of walking in, not angry, not vengeful, just present. So here it is. My story. Not triumph. Not tragedy. Just truth. I showed up. I stayed. I didn't wait for permission to matter. And maybe that's the lesson. Not how to be welcomed, but how to arrive anyway. If these words reached you, if they stirred even a flicker of your own strength, Then I ask only this: share it. Tell another woman who still waits to be seen. Not for me, for her.